Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. I hope you would be safe and sound inside your homes. Dear students, yesterday that school education said that the elementary level schools would be open for the students from March 8th, whereas the teachers have to attend from March 1st, whether it is elementary level or the at secondary level, and students of 9th to 12th have to attend from March 1st. Dear students, the corona COVID-19 is still here and there. It is mounting pressure once again. In Maharashtra, it is rapid increase is seen. Yesterday, there were 7,000 cases reported as COVID-19 positive. Dear students, we hope this year the schools would function normally and there would be the real physical teaching, because this digital platform isn't a substitute for the actual mode of teaching. And during the last academic year 1920 you met with a huge losses and you have to compensate that very loss by putting extra efforts. Their students, yesterday a student called me to make me learn non-alignment policy of class 12th subject political science. Their students, in 1945 finally Second World War came to an end, and it had some major consequences. One of the important consequences of the Second World War was that United Nations organization got formed, and another big consequence was that two superpowers emerged in the world, that is the former USSR and the United States of America. And third important consequence of the Second World War was that most colonized nations of the world started gaining freedom. India gained first, followed by Sri Lanka, then Indonesia, Egypt, Ghana. So what is then the non-alignment policy? When Second World War came to an end, there were two opposed blocs that were formed in the world. One bloc was headed by the former USSR, that is simply called the Communist bloc, and another the by Americans, that is called the capitalist bloc. And these two nations emerged as the superpowers in the world, and there was a war on the supremacy, not the actual war, but there was the Cold War or war of talks between the two. And finally, the two opposing military blocs were formed in the world. And the countries which gained the independence after the end of the Second World War thought that we should not join either of the two blocs because it will unsafe their fresh freedom. So non-alignment policy is simply a policy that those countries which gained independence after the end of Second World War did not join either of the two blocs which were formed after the culmination of the Second World War, and they remained aloof from these military alliances or military blocs. So I am repeating the things for you so that you can grasp the concept well. In 1945, finally, the Second World War came to an end, and it had some major consequences. One of the important consequences of Second World War was that most colonized nations of the world started gaining freedom. India gained it in 1947, Sri Lanka in 1948, Indonesia in 1952, and there were other countries which gained independence after the culmination of the Second World War. And the two military blocs were opposed blocs, completely hostile blocs were formed in the world, and there was a war over the supremacy between the two. That is the former USSR and United States of America. They were ideological, ideologically two different blocs. One was promoting the capitalism, that is the United States of America, another the communism, that was the former USSR. And they developed or they formed the military alliances, and these fresh independent nations, India, Yugoslavia, Egypt, they did not want to join either of the two blocs because they thought it will unsafe their fresh freedom. In order to in order to safeguard their fresh freedom, they decided not to join the military aims of the both the blocs, and remaining aloof and remaining non-aligned with these two blocks is the non-alignment policy. So simply you have to keep in the mind that non-alignment policy is the foreign policy of those countries which gained independence after the end of the Second World War but did not join either of the two blocks. Dear students, right from the 1945 up to 1991, there was a war between the two, cooled war between the two over the supremacy, not actual war, not hot war of talks or ideological war. And this war in the world history is termed as the Cold War. And the countries which gained independence after the end of Second World War did not join their military aims because Americans formed a military unit or a military alliance that is called NATO. In opposed to this, Warsaw Pact was formed by former USSR, and both the blocs were serving as magnet to attract more and more countries, and all the countries which gained independence after the end of Second World War, India, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Yugoslavia, Egypt, did not join either of the two blocs or their military aims. They did not remain neutral in their policies. They developed the relations with the rest of the world, even with those countries, but did not join either of the two blocks their military aims. So simply you have to keep in the mind non-alignment policy is a policy of those independent nations which gained independence after the end of Second World War but did not join either of the two blocks because it was thought by joining the military aims of the both the blocks of any of the blocks it will unsafe their fresh freedom. Dear students, so non-alignment policy is the foreign policy of those countries which gained independence after the end of Second World War but did not join either of the two blocs because they were in a apprehension by joining either of the two blocs their fresh freedom will be in danger. Their students, some great leaders took that very initiative not to join the either of the two blocs or their military aims. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru from India, Sukarno from Indonesia, Colonel Nisal from Egypt, Marshal Tito from Yugoslavia, and decided not to join either of the two blocs. And its foundation was laid in 1955 in the bonding conference, or its principles were laid in 1955 in a bonding conference, which served as the base for the non-alignment movement. Dear students, so non-alignment policy is the foreign policy of those countries which gained independence after the end of the Second World War but did not join either of the two blocs. There was an apprehension because by joining either of the two blocs, their fresh freedom would be in danger. So simply you have to keep in the mind that a non-alignment policy or a non-alignment movement is the foreign policy of those countries which gained independence after end of the Second World War but did not join either of the two blocs, whether it was a USSR or it was the United States of America. They were promoting two different ideologies. The USSR was promoting communist ideology, and the United States of America was promoting capitalist ideology, and there was the ideological war between the two, or there was the tension between the two over the supremacy right from 1945 to 1991. But in 1991, the USSR collapsed and it disintegrated in 15 new independent states, and finally the world order changed. The bipolar world got changed into unipolar world. Dear students, so simply you have to keep in the mind that non-alignment movement is the foreign policy of those countries which gained independence after the end of Second World War but did not join either of the two blocs or their military aims, but it is never a neutral policy. They developed a relation with the rest of the world but did not join the military aims of the both the blocs which emerged after the end of the Second World War, and their main motive was to have supremacy in the world. Dear students, hope you might have grasped the concept. In case of any confusion or query that may strike your mind after watching this video, you can call me on 7006 or WhatsApp me on the same number. And when you forward your query by any means, by calling or by WhatsApping, within short duration of time, your query or confusion shall be cleared. But the most important thing is that you have to put extra efforts, you have to do extra hard work to take your boat to the bank. Hard work and self-study is mantra in your hands by which you can crack every barrier in front of you. Dear students, schools are reopening from March 1st. Hope there would be normal schooling, and we will inshallah compensate each kind of loss which you met during the last academic year. Dear students, work hard. My prayers are with you, and you will succeed in every fashion. Thanks. Be balanced.